What does freedom mean to you? Does it mean the freedom to choose? The freedom to have a family and raise your kids according to your own values? What about living a wild, adventurous life, experimenting with music, relationships, or art? What does freedom really mean? What if freedom meant something that only a few Americans still understood? What if it meant that your choices and your values were set by you, rather than by some politician in a far-off capital? Some people think we're only free to choose to live exactly how they live, by their moral code, or their narrow worldviews. But if liberty means anything, it means that you, and you alone, have the power to exercise your rights to which the laws of nature and nature's God granted you. It's time to put these principles back into action. It's time to restore the American dream, activate in our communities, and take our country back. It's time to wake up, America.
About 40% of companies have moved to a 4-day work week. Lots of people want to work 4 days a week. I'd love to have a 3-day weekend. Let's talk to a man who knows a lot more than most people do about it. He's a career coach. His name is Larry Sharp, and of course, he's a very famous libertarian joining us right now. Good morning, Larry. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, good morning, brother. So happy to be here. How you been?
I've been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Larry. So I guess just give us your thoughts, big picture. What do you think about companies moving to a 4-day work week? Good thing, bad thing?
Yeah. This is a legacy from the lockdowns. Without question, it is. This is what people don't realize. When the very wealthy who decided, wait a minute, I can go make money and still live at my second home, they started saying, let me change how things think, right? The wealthy people, particularly in large cities, always have at least 2 homes. They have one in that city and then one someplace else. The one someplace else is always a nicer home. So they went there during the lockdowns and they said, wait a minute, I can make money doing this. But so did the PMC, right? The PMC, the PMC is the professional management class for those who aren't aware of that. The PMC is the second tier right underneath the wealthy. They found out that since they live in the suburbs, they can make money from the suburbs. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I like this idea too. And then the people who are working, the more working class people, they're the ones who had to adapt their lifestyle. They're the ones who said, you know what, I'm at home with my parents, or I'm going to have more roommates, or I'm going to do whatever it takes, because now that I've basically been laid off for a year or two or pushed aside, I found other ways to do things I like. I want to be able to listen to Austin Peterson's podcast every morning and not be bothered by my boss, right? I want to be able to play video games for an hour in the middle of the day. I want to be able to do those things that I enjoy that I can't do if I've got to spend, 20 minutes in the metro every morning and then sit in front of my boss.
Let's be honest, the metro sucks, Larry. And I mean, not to speak up, not to go all in on the workers of the world unite here or anything, but I got to say, like, the commute in the mornings out there on the East Coast is hell, Larry.
Absolutely. Yes. So now all this happened. So now the problem, though, is while a boss might go, great, why doesn't everybody stay home? If everybody stays home, that destroys your company culture. That destroys your idea generation. That breaks everything down in your actual company. So you've got to find a way to get people back into the office. So they do things like give you a 4-day work week. So you'll be here for 4 days and you'll work for 3. But in reality, you'll have to come to the office 2 of those 4 days. So you're in the office for 2 days, you're working from home 2 days, and you're off for 3. The idea is you still get work. You're able to keep company culture and still get idea generation. And that's why they do things like get baristas there, or have or instead of baristas, maybe they will have childcare there. Because the second piece is the PMC female class has done a good job. They actually have had a baby boom. So now if you're a professional management class and you're a woman, you had a baby when you were home. Why? Because you were home. Well, now you don't want to leave that baby. So they've got to provide childcare and things like that. This is all because of a legacy of the lockdowns.
Now, if you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Larry Sharp. He is a corporate career consultant and a pretty famous libertarian. We're talking to him about the 4-day work week. So maybe it's bad for companies, but Larry, I mean, at some point, like, I'm not suggesting that we should become like Europe, But at some point, like there's got to be a little bit of give and take. Uh, when it comes to like the workplace culture, when you describe workplace culture, what I'm thinking about are all these pointless meetings where
Mhm.
employers have a waste of, and all of these pointless middle managers whose only job has been to try and it has been to sit over people's shoulders and just make sure that they're remaining productive, and they don't want to sit down and come up with new metrics to be able to determine how effective their employees are being. So I mean, and to be quite frank, remote work has shown that there's a lot of redundancy when it comes to middle management. A lot of these companies probably realize that they don't need to have that many employees, but I mean, you need the employees. You may not need the middle managers, even though they are employees as well. But I think if anything, it's kind of laid bare, like, what's worthwhile, what kind of work is worthwhile, and what's not. And I mean, honestly, I kind of hate the whole workplace culture ideal, Larry. I don't think that it really contributes overall. I think because usually it's some kind of smarmy, like, birthday party or something like that, where people who don't like each other and don't want to spend time together are forced to do so anyway. So I mean, you've been there, right? I don't know if you've ever worked at a Walmart.
100%.
I've worked at a Walmart, and they waste your time in these stupid meetings, and they make you sing and dance and clap, and it's just it's
Well,
retarded.
but there's a problem here, right? What you're saying is true, but then you use the wrong company. And what I mean by that is if you are working class, your life doesn't change much. That's the sad part, right? If you're working class, you're going to still have to wind up going to show up and do the birthday party thing. But your first part is 100% the money, right? That's one of the reasons why there are so many layoffs. It isn't the only reason, but it is one of them. It is the idea that, yeah, I'm finding out that I don't need all these people. And here's the problem. We are still, particularly in our government, we're in the industrial mindset. We should be in a post-industrial mindset, right? The post-industrial mindset is what you're talking about. We still worry about people getting paid by the hour, right? This is not valuable in this type of situation. I have to find other ways of measuring how my employees are productive, whether it is the amount of things they put out or customer service, whatever is the issue. And this is challenging. A lot of companies don't know how to do that. And worse, larger organizations like government or union shops don't know how to handle it either. They are forced into this per hour mindset, and it does not work. And now you add things like the Family Leave Act, you have a bigger problem, right? If I'm a union worker and I've now decided to have this contract where I've agreed to get paid more because I'm going to work on a weekend or I'm going to work during the holidays or something like that. Now I've had my union negotiate this, so I'm getting paid double, triple. When the government steps in and says, well, now we're going to have a Family Medical Leave Act. Well, wait, does that count with my union? Does that not count with my union? How does that work? Well, wait a minute, I want a 4-day weekend. Okay, well, does that count with my union? Does that not count? What about a Family Medical Leave Act? We have not figured this out at all. And we're doing it the hard way right now. And sadly, the people who are paying are not the wealthy. The people who are paying are the middle class.
That's fascinating there. You can send us a text this morning on the Wake Up America show to 573-319-1586. If you have a question for Larry, again, send us in a text, 573-319-1586. Little D Trucking over on the live chat says that I'm going to start the truck 4-day work week. Lol, nobody's going to have anything. Okay, so
Yeah.
so not
That's my
everybody can
point,
do
right?
it.
If you're
Yeah.
working at Walmart, or if you're working class, if you're blue collar, right? Or I'll even go pink collar, right? Pink collar meaning you're more of what they call the heel, right? Healthcare, education, admin, and or learning, right? You're in that world, right? That is you don't get a 4-day work week, right? You got to go to work. If you're a trucker, he's right. You got to truck the stuff out. This is heavily for people who are in the PMC or wealthy or people who aren't working every day in that regard.
Okay, but here's the thing. Elon Musk is in big trouble today, right? He sent out this
Mm-hmm.
employee, he's going JD Rockefeller on everybody. He's yeah, get back into the mines, little children, you're going to work 24/7. And yes, our Silicon Valley, fat, lazy, overpaid, underworked to a large extent. Sure, absolutely, right? But let's just say that, that it wasn't Twitter if it was somebody else, right? A lot of corporate workplaces, their culture is a little bit toxic. So let's just say, Elon Musk, has pushed his company perhaps a little bit too far because strategically, it's a blunder to have your employees, running for the hills when you're running this massive company like what Elon Musk is doing, and he says no more remote work. I mean, yesterday he had after 5 p.m. he had to send out a memo, calling people back, actually calling people saying, please don't leave. I mean, employers need to be ready to accommodate workers who are used to being able to have this kind of work-life balance that gives them the flexibility to actually have children. I mean, we do need to be having children, right?
Yes, but there's the other piece, right? It isn't just flexibility. You want to have an environment to where people want to come to work. That's the thing that they're not getting. And guys like Elon Musk aren't accustomed to that because when you're Elon and you're the only game in town, and Elon has gone out of his way to be that, right? Oh, I want to go to Mars. I kind of got to work for Elon. Oh, I want to have hybrid cars. Well, I kind of got to work for Elon. As that goes away, people aren't rushing to work for him anymore. There's a whole bunch of social media companies, right? Twitter isn't the only one out there. If I want to be in that world, I don't have to work for Elon. When you're a monopoly, you can be a jerk. But when you're not a monopoly, all of a sudden, not so easy anymore. So Elon now has to change his mindset. He can't just do the cool thing. You can get people to work 80 hours a week. Absolutely. But as a libertarian, it's got to be voluntary. You got to want to do it. People will work 80 hours a week if they love what they're doing, if they want to do it, and you got to pay them well. You don't pay them hourly. You give them a nice fat salary or some type of, in best case, some kind of equity in the company or something like that, and they will happily do 80 hours a week. But you can't just demand it. They walk away, and Elon's found that out the hard way.
We're speaking to Larry Sharp. He is a professional career consultant. He does a lot of good work on talking about these kinds of employee and workplace issues. You're listening and watching to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Send us a text, 573-319-1586. Larry, if you have to vote for president and it's between Dave Smith and Spike, who are you voting for? Spike Cohen. Spike Cohen or Dave Smith?
I have to for only those two. I'm going to convince. I know them both. I'm going to convince them to jump on the same ticket. Is what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay, but if they're running against each other,
I'm going to make them work together. I know them both. I'm going to be on the phone.
But they're not running together. They're running separately. Spike's got Tasha as his vice presidential candidate, and Dave has.
Oh no! Now, if Tasha's involved, then Spike. I mean, Tasha's the best. Done. That's it. If Tasha's involved, it's Spike. I got Tasha's. Everyone loves Tasha. They actually call Spike Tasha's husband. So yes, if that's the case, Tasha wins hands down. Yes.
How do you feel about the state of the liberty movement right now, Larry?
We got a butt whipping this year. We have not done very well this year at all. But I feel like there were a lot of issues that we had, and you and I discussed this a while ago. I think the Republican Party got beat up this year also. I think that a lot of the things that people thought were good, as I mentioned before, were not so good, right? You and I discussed the idea of, we're having a lot of wins. I was like, Republican Party's they're not having wins. These are not wins. They're not wins. And I knew they weren't wins, and I could tell. I was the one who was saying this was not going to be a red wave. I knew Lee Zeldin had no chance of winning New York State. I was talking all this stuff and people were not hearing me. I travel the state. I am still active on the ground. I talk to everybody. I knew what was going to happen. And this is not the right answer. It is in New York State. It is actually harder to get a gun and easier to get an abortion than it was last year. This has not been a win for the Conservative Party or conservative side in my state.
If you had to vote between Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump.
Wow. Wow. You guys are just trying to make me make these hard decisions. I think I may fall back to a Gary Johnsonism. When he was asked that question, he said, Hillary or Trump, gun to the head. He said, pull the trigger.
Hide your guns. It's Gary Johnson. Larry, is there anything else? Is there anything else that you think people should know before I let you go?
Yes, this is actually a good time for us. This is a good time for labor to rethink. It's a good time for employees to rethink. This is a transition period. Sadly, this was supposed to happen over the course of probably 10 or 15 years. Because of the lockdown, it was forced to happen now. So I know it's challenging for a lot of people, but this was supposed to happen anyway. Let's just push through it now so we can figure out what's a better place for everybody to be in when it comes to labor.
Larry Sharp, he's the man. Larry, where can people follow you online?
You can easily go to LarrySharp.com. That's where I was campaigning. Or if you want to, just check me out, Larry Sharp, anywhere. Google Larry Sharp. You'll see me someplace.
Larry Sharp, Sharpe. Larry Sharp, thank you very much for your time today, sir. We appreciate you.
Have a good one.
Keep fighting the good fight for freedom, sir. We appreciate you very much. What did you think of Larry Sharp?
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no
to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Well, lots of finger pointing going on last week after the midterms failed to produce a red wave. So who's really to blame? Is it Donald Trump and time for us to move on? Or is it Mitch McConnell, who from behind the scenes failed to get out enough money in these key elections where people like Blake Masters and others failed to get across the finish line in winnable races? Let's talk to somebody who knows best. That's Tho Bishop. He is the communications director for the Mises Institute, and he's joining us on the line right now. Good morning, Tho. Thank you for taking your time with us today.
Thank you for having me, Austin.
Yeah, we were having this conversation on Twitter yesterday. I thought it would be worthy of a segment this morning on the morning show. The question of who's really to blame for people like Blake Masters not getting across the finish line. And you kind of, have feet in both camps here. Mitch McConnell didn't spend enough and Donald Trump didn't do enough. Do you want to make your case?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we have to recognize that we just have a profound leadership problem in the GOP and really just amongst sane people in American politics right now. I'm someone who has been a Trump fan, since 2016. I think that the Trump revolution was great. And that was an example of, I think, American Republicans were desperate for new leadership and wanted Donald Trump to fill that void. The problem is that we got a situation where Donald Trump didn't spend money that he got for his people, right? He was doing donation drives where $1 went to Blake Masters for 99 going to Donald Trump. If you want to be a leader of the party, you've got to spend and put your people in power. But Mitch McConnell certainly is to blame, spending more money on attacking Republicans in Alaska than getting Blake Masters to the finish line in Arizona. Kevin McCarthy, has been a complete disappointment, really his entire congressional career. The priorities, again, it doesn't matter if it's MAGA camp or establishment Republicans, all of them deserve the loss here. And it's really a troubling time right now.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Tho Bishop. He's the communications director for the Mises Institute. Now, in one of the fingers are pointing out is the candidates who believed in the 2020 stolen election theme turned off the independents. Do you buy that?
Perhaps to a certain extent. I mean, it's something that I assumed going into this election. My kind of working analysis was that normal people kind of are underappreciated in politics, right? And so normal people are, they'll have inconsistent views, right? They don't want their taxes raised, but they want government to keep their hands off the Medicare and Medicaid. And I just kind of assumed that going into this, any turnoff they had maybe about some of the later Trump stuff, the way the media has presented things, all of the Democratic hysteria over January 6th, that was always going to take a backbench to, gasoline prices and the cost of steak and eggs going up. But if you look around, I mean, even though nationally, right, the turnout for Republicans was significantly higher than Democrats broadly, on these key races, the results are what they are. And there's something to be said. I think a big part of this is Republicans still have not caught up to the changes in the way that elections are conducted, right? I'm not talking about, the Kraken and voting machines changing tabulations after the fact. There's something to be said about Democrats having vastly overperformed in increases in vote by mail balloting. Again, some of these fundamentals on how elections are changed. And I think that perhaps is a bigger thing than turnoffs to independents generally. But the same thing, though, is complaining about it after the fact isn't good enough, right? I mean, we're dealing with a very sick and twisted left right now, doing everything they can to subject us to anti-human, very dangerous policies. And again, if we don't have an answer to that on the right to stop them, then we deserve everything that's coming. We need serious people handling these things. And what 2022 has shown is that we simply do not have that serious people up top.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Tho Bishop, Communications Director for the Mises Institute, about what went wrong in the elections last week for Republicans. Now, a lot of the pointing that's going on right now is Donald Trump blaming, Ron DeSantis for, for this. And I know that you're a DeSantis Republican. It says so in your Twitter profile. What do you make of the attacks that Donald Trump has brought, the broadsides he's launching against your boy DeSantis?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I hate to see it. I feel I think this is the first time really since 2016 where Donald Trump sees a genuine rival for the stage. And in particular with DeSantis, it's someone who is not an establishment guy, really, by my definition. He's someone who has a unique record where he can almost out MAGA Trump in many ways, right? When he was in, everything that he did in COVID, he often had to do forcing a more traditional Republican legislature to do what he wanted them to do. He stood up not only to DC, but to corporate power, trying to become the enforcement wing of Fauciism. And so the specific accomplishments of DeSantis, I think, really threatened Trump's old hold over, let's say, the MAGA movement. And so I'm not surprised that Trump is lashing out. I hate to see it. In my ideal world of worlds, I would have much rather had 4 more years of Trump and 4 years of DeSantis really leveraging every single thing he could get from his governor's position, and then ideally go into 8 years of DeSantis afterwards. Given the results of 2022, given Trump's reactions to it, given the turnoff that his attacks on on DeSantis are having, even amongst friends, people here in Bay County where I'm active in my Republican Party. This is a very MAGA club. They're not liking what Donald is saying right now. And so I'm not surprised by it with the egos involved, and it is what it is. And again, I have tremendous respect for what Donald Trump did, the energy he infused in this movement. But it's a bad look right now. He's hurting himself, right now. And again, the attacks that are going to start coming to DeSantis are part of the game. I trust that he's going to be able to handle it well. Again, trying to make him out to be some sort of Kevin McCarthy plot against MAGA, while you have Donald Trump out there trying to double down on Kevin McCarthy as speaker. It's a little funny in its own right. But I'm not surprised, but it is disappointing to see.
We're speaking to Tho Bishop, Communications Director for the Mises Institute, about the midterm elections. One last question regarding, surrounding the midterms. Over the weekend, the senator from Missouri, Josh Hawley, tweeted that the old Republican Party is dead and that it's time for us to create a new Republican Party that appeals to the massive amount of independence that the Republicans lost last week. I guess my question is, even though I agree with that on its face, though, is how do you create a new Republican Party that's appealing to independence that still holds to the ideals of the MAGA movement, knowing that to some extent, some of the, the election fraud narrative of the MAGA movement is what I would, interpret as a millstone sort of holding it back. So what would a new Republican Party be? And, could people like yourself and myself, who are more libertarian Republicans, have a place in it?
I believe so. I think intellectually, the project that really kind of represents what Hawley's talking about, and really I think kind of defines DeSantis's intellectual worldview, which I think will become increasingly important on the right, is a sort of burgeoning national conservatism movement. And that I think is a more broad coalition where you have people with, particularly on some economic issues, there's a lot of interest in explicit protectionism, things like that, which I do not like. But on the other side, there's increased skepticism of the administrative state, kind of recognition that politics of old, the politics of the 20th century has been a disaster for the American cause, which I think is right into kind of a libertarian viewpoint of American history. The issue is, though, is that it's one thing to talk about these things and to gripe. Again, it's one thing to acknowledge that there are aspects of the 2020 election that were wrong, that democracy was weaponized. Again, we could look at changes to the way elections were conducted in 2020, the way that big tech had a cartel censoring important information, which you can't have in a democracy, right? When information that would change the way that people would vote were coordinatedly censored, like the Hunter Biden laptop, that is a major issue. But we can't simply complain about it. We need solutions. And I think what Hawley is pointing at is that the Republican Party right now simply isn't serious enough about the things they claim to care about. And I think this is true with Trump. I think this is true with McConnell. I think this is true with McCarthy. I think this is true with Ronna Romney McDaniels. And again, hopefully, if there's any silver lining that comes to this, it's that we have a complete changeover in the true leadership, and we have people of real merit, of really serious people. Even if serious people I may disagree with on very important issues, we just need serious people right now to really build a coalition that can stop, again, some of the very evil things that are coming from the left.
Yeah, and if I can, briefly interject my own point of view on this one, despite the fact that I think that the Republicans losing largely last week is harmful to our country, it's harmful to our economy, and it's harmful to many aspects of our society culturally. The one bright spot in this might be that the chaos offers people who are of our intellectual ilk or our philosophical mindset an opportunity to sort of rise. Where there's chaos, right, there's opportunity, right? Where there's crisis, there's opportunity, right? So now is a very good time for people who believe what we believe to rise up and to establish ourselves in positions of power within the Republican Party, so that, if a new party is created, as we're discussing here, that people who believe what we believe, that might, have, anti-elitist views on the bureaucratic state or the deep state or the administrative state, whatever you want to call it, that we can work with them on those issues while still sort of like, throwing elbows whenever they want to come in with, protectionist trade policy or some other kind of, central planning style solution that, comes along with the more Theodore Roosevelt wing of the Republican Party. But I'd like to move on, though. I've got a couple of minutes left here. I'd like to ask you about the whole Sam Bankman-Fried controversy. We're going to talk about this later in the show. I mean, without making it too, minor of a topic here, it's already being blamed on libertarians, right, for this massive collapse of a crypto exchange. This Sam Bankman-Fried character, big Democratic donor. I mean, I guess the second biggest Democratic donor behind George Soros. Something's fishy here. What do you think is the big takeaway from this story? What are you really focusing in on? And do you think is the most important thing to know about this?
Well, FTX seems kind of like a perfect storm on it's a combination of like a really bad Ayn Rand villain with sort of a modern aesthetics, right? If you look at the guy, and really what this is all about is, FTX was trying to utilize the SEC, the regulatory state, to really hold itself up as the de facto crypto exchange, which if you talk to kind of the hardcore Bitcoin purist, right, they would say, like, well, an institution like FTX is precisely what Bitcoin was meant to fix, right? Bitcoin was meant to decentralize the financial system to allow for true peer-to-peer exchanges, where something like an FTX becomes a centralized, regulated financial institution. And sure enough, right, now we've got a good old-fashioned bank run happening in crypto, right? So FTX, the more that it resembled old financial institutions, that precisely is what created sort of its downfall here. And then again, everything that Sam Bankman-Fried tried to do, instead of presenting himself as the billionaire that cares, he just wants to give everything back, right? Of course, this is typically always a front for very nefarious, behind the scenes things. The political aspect is it just adds a whole other layer here. I have a feeling if it was a Republican donor if this was Peter Thiel, that was walking away with ran away with billions of customer funds, the way the media would treat this would be a little bit different than if it was Sam Bankman-Fried. But again, the libertarian criticism, it's always funny because, in the libertarian space, we can't seem to get anything right. And yet we are blamed for, all the woes of civilization. Just another day in our little crazy world.
Can't win elections, can't change the outcome, can't take power, but very powerful enough to destroy empires. That's Tho Bishop, the communications director for the Mises Institute. Tho, great conversation, great interview. We hope to have you back. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Austin.
Thank you very much. What did you think of Tho Bishop? Send us a text.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you?
I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion, delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table, or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Hello, I'm George. Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1, you can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself, or me mum, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great! Number 2, most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3, you're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell, this commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Let's talk to Liberty Laura, who's joining us now live and on camera. Good morning, Laura. Thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Hi, Austin.
Hey, thanks
for
so much.
having me. I feel bad for only lost her.
Wait a minute. The woman who wants to call for pandemic amnesty after she was talking about all these horrible things that should happen to anti-vaxxers, you feel bad for her?
I agree to all of those points. Well, as you and I were talking about, I feel bad for her in the right that she has no idea what was coming for her, which is what we'll talk about. But I was a fangirl. I got pregnant with my first son in 2019. And, I had some women in my life to talk to, but I really felt like I was like alone. Like I had no idea what was going on. And there's so many things that you've heard about your whole life growing up about pregnancy and about childbirth. And they say, be careful what medicines you take, be careful what foods you eat, be careful what you do while you're pregnant. You can't fly at a certain point. And there's all of these things, and you want to protect your baby and you want to protect yourself, but you also feel like you're going to vomit all the time. And so you need some resources to help you feel better emotionally and physically. And so Emily Oster has a series of books. She's an economist at Brown University, and she's also a mom. And so she wrote a series of books breaking down these pregnancy and parenting myths by using data and statistical analysis, and really lays it all out there in a beautifully well done series of books. And her first book is called Expecting Better. It was her top performing book out of the 3. And that's the one I read. And it's about, can you eat raw sushi while you're pregnant? And basically the answer is yes, the risk is low. Can you eat deli meat while you're pregnant? Basically the answer is, if you choose to take that risk, the risk is low. And she really gives
there's a risk of There's a risk of eating deli meat when you're pregnant?
All of these things. You didn't know, right? You didn't know, but now you do. And when you're pregnant and you become a mom, your amygdala, the fear center in your brain, grows. And so you need data like this to be able to operate. Also, Austin, Mexican shredded cheese. There's like a listeria risk with shredded. All of these facts are in my stuffed in my already busy brain now. But
good to know. All right. All right. So she was a hero of yours because you were reading her books about pregnancy, and there was all this really good information in there. So you kind of idolized her, and then the pandemic happens.
Yes. So I had followed her since 2019. I had followed her on Instagram and read some of her newsletter content. And then the pandemic happened, and it happened slow, right? I think it was a slow burn for most people. And I was watching the content she posts, and she does this regular thing that she's known for, where she does Q&As on her Instagram during her 6 a.m. morning run. And I was watching these Q&As, and 2020 happened, and we were all pretty scared, and at least at the first part of 2020. And I remember I was one of those people that was like washing my groceries when we came home, in April and May. And but then that year happened in 2021, and most people we knew had COVID. I was pregnant at that point, so I said, I'm not going to get a new vaccine while I'm pregnant. And I was watching these Q&A questions, and they started to dramatically change from how I was thinking about things. And they started to say, like, well, we've kept our kids away from their grandparents for 1.5 years now. Should we keep going at it? They refuse to wear a mask outside with us. And I'm like, well, you don't need to wear a mask outside. All of the data says that the transmission outdoors just doesn't happen. Emily, you must respond to this with the facts, right? And she never did. And that happened all through 2021. And then these parents were like, can I booster my 6-month-old? And I said, these women are different than me. We do not think alike. Mm-hmm. And instead of responding with like, hey, the data actually shows that your healthy 6-month-old didn't need the original shot and probably definitely doesn't need a booster. She really took this nonchalant approach, and it was just like, it's whatever you want to do, which was completely fundamentally different than how she had her claim to fame.
So she used to, when you were reading her books and she was talking about pregnancy and things like that, she was an expert on, she was providing real data and real research. But when it came to vaccination and, just a devil's advocate thing, she, like a lot of people, kind of have to rely on people who are actual experts in that field to say, oh, we're going to do that. But she didn't even provide data from those experts, is what you're saying?
Now, she would say kids are low risk. She would say kids in this category are extremely low risk for hospitalization and definitely death, but go ahead and do whatever you want. Now, of course, parents should parent how they choose, but I was reacting to this content much differently than her. I have a handful of mom friends who also watch her, and we were texting each other during this time, and we're like, what's happening to Emily Oster? She's kind of lost her level-headed approach. And there's this tweet that's going around now of hers, and I believe it's from 2021. And she was advocating for people to lose their jobs if they didn't get vaccinated. She said, shaming people who won't get vaccinated will never work, but we should definitely force them to get vaccinated if they want to do things that they enjoy, such as work, air travel, etc. And so she tried to take this middle ground stance. And that's when I said I feel bad for her. She kind of got lost in like the balkanization that's happening. She tried so hard to safeguard her like moderate position on things. And I see a number of friends and family around me doing this. They try and be moderate. They try and stay in the middle. But the problem is that there is no middle, because we all believe in different facts and different truths anymore.
Mm.
So she got lost, and no one likes her because the left attacked her, if you'll remember, for advocating for opening schools in the fall of 2021. And now the right hates her for saying, please forgive us for every time we were wrong, and shamed you for it.
Man, this is good stuff. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking to Laura Linkton. We're talking about the author Emily Oster, who Laura idolized for some time, really looked up to for her pregnancy information, and who really had a fall from grace during the pandemic. She was the author of the piece in The Atlantic, who was talking about why we need to have a pandemic amnesty. Now, on the good side of things, she can't win. Obviously, she's in a scenario where everybody hates her. But I mean, she does admit that she was wrong about schools. At least the left is coming out admitting it. The fact that, and this is what I've been saying, and not a lot of Republicans or right wingers are agreeing with me necessarily, but I've been saying that the fact that the left and the people on the left are calling for this shows that at least they're admitting that they made a mistake and that there were wrongs. And the whole school, the educational thing, a lot of people are going to dig themselves in. And I think I actually have a quote from Emily Oster here, where she says, "The people who got it right for whatever reason may want to gloat." Yes, we do, of course. And then she says, "Those who got it wrong for whatever reason may feel defensive and retrench into a position that doesn't accord with the facts," meaning that the people who, advocated for keeping schools closed are going to say, "Oh, well, it was the right thing," or they're going to still believe that what they did was the right thing. So, I mean, it's going to be difficult for us to kind of figure out a way out of this that doesn't, just basically put us back to where square one, right? Where people are blinded on blinded on both sides, really, right?
Yes, and I agree. And that's the problem. And it's specifically, her piece is titled Political Amnesty. And if we look back at what does that word evoke in your mind, the word amnesty, usually people associate it with immigration, right? And so the last time we granted wide scale amnesty was Ronald Reagan in regards to immigration in the 1980s. What happened after that? However you feel about immigration, whether you're open, closed border, whatever, what we did not do when we granted amnesty was fix our systemic immigration problems. And those persisted. If we just grant amnesty after the pandemic, the people in charge who made the mistakes that were in a position to know better will continue. Those problems will persist. The way that they abused and neglected their power will continue. We cannot grant amnesty. We have to fix the problem.
Yeah, I've seen my wife and I were talking about the other day about this story about like a 91-year-old concentration camp guard, right, from World War II. And he was 17 years old at the time, but he was in the guard tower, and he got convicted and he died in jail. I think he spent 2 months in jail before he died. And so we were kind of talking about this. We're like, should we really be going back and prosecuting people who, worked at these camps when they were 17? And we kind of got caught up in like this question about, okay, well, what if he was drafted and he was forced to do there? Is that different than if he signed up and did it? But, at the end of the day, he was a member of the SS, which, you don't volunteer to be an SS member. You have to join that crew. But, it's kind of along those same lines is like, we don't, if there is a Nuremberg 2.0, as people are calling for on Twitter, then, not everybody is Hermann Goering, right? Not everybody, is going to get hanged at the end. Not everybody's, Heinz Guderian, or, not everybody is, a top Nazi that needs to go and hang. But some do, Laura. So there are some people who committed great crimes against humanity. I mean, it wasn't as bad as China, where they were like, locking us up and like sealing our doors and things like that. But there were some terrible crimes that were committed, there are people who are responsible. And, the hope is that if the Senate is taken over by Republicans, Senator Rand Paul might become the head of the health committee, which would mean that he could have the power to do, commissions. And I mean, these midterm elections are important as a reckoning in my mind. Wouldn't you agree?
Fauci will be very busy during his retirement if that is the case. So I was talking about consequences of what happened during the pandemic when another friend of mine pointed out when I was reading Emily Oster's piece, the most severe consequence for Emily and her family during that time was that her family had to wear masks during a hike. But to bring it back to her specialty, I had a friend who was pregnant with twins working in healthcare who was forced to get a vaccine to keep her job and maternity leave. And she didn't want to. And so she, in her mind, had to endanger the health of herself and her kids for the sake of her job. The pandemic put people, not the pandemic, politicians' reactions to the pandemic put people in those kind of positions, people were out of work. People had their health autonomy violated. Women had to go into ultrasound appointments to discover that they had had a miscarriage and lost their baby without their husband there. I mean, these were severe consequences that happened because of the reactions of politicians who were in a position to know better. And so for some people, it's going to be really hard to get amnesty or forgiveness.
Maybe we do believe in reparations. Reparations must be paid. Liberty, Laura, you're always a great guest, and we appreciate your time on the show. Thanks for coming on and talking about your heroes that have fallen, this Emily Oster character. Tell us how people can find out more about your work. I know you've got I think it's a weekly newsletter that you write. It's a really great newsletter. You want to share that with our listeners?
Yeah. So when I was pregnant in 2019, I was working in Congress. I was working in the House of Representatives as a communications director. And after all of COVID happened, I quit that job and now run my own political news aggregation service. It comes out 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. What I do as using my experience as a communications director is I go through everything online and pull the best of the best and a lot of underreported political news stories that you might not see through the mainstream media. That way you don't have to spend hours on Fox News and Reddit and Twitter and subjecting yourself to all that online violence. And instead you can get a succinct, summarized news brief for you 3 times a week. And you can sign up at billbrief.com. My newsletter is called Bill Brief. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, of course, with the CCP at Laura from Kansas.
She sometimes moonlights in making some awesome products for the AP for Liberty shop. Laura, thank you very much for your time and for your service in the cause of freedom. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Did you like Liberty, Laura?
Were you exposed to hazardous materials while serving in the military and have an illness or condition as a result?
If so, you may be eligible for VA benefits and services.
Whether you need health care or want to file a disability compensation claim related to military exposures, VA is here to help.
Visit va.gov/military-exposures to learn more and apply today.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun. Thank you.
Had enough yet? Do facts no longer matter? Are lies to be encouraged instead of punished? This is not our inheritance. If truth no longer matters, we will not remain free for long. This is our generation's challenge, to defend our founders' hope that we the people could self-govern if we defend our right to get the facts. And right now, we're building the only defense of free people have, the facts on every politician, every position they held, every statement they've made, every vote they've made, and any cash they've taken. It's the real history on those now pandering for your vote. There are hundreds of young people building our defense right now, and they need your help. We all have our passions, but as our ancestors knew, when events become so foul they threaten us all, we must stand and defend each other. Please, have our backs. Join us at votesmart.org.
happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas and a liberty New Year. Socialists and commies may try to convince you that the holiday's all about free stuff. But let's be honest, we all know whose wallet Santa's gifts are coming out of. There ain't no such thing as a free stocking. Santa is the only guy with a big white beard promising free stuff that we want anything to do with this holiday. And if you don't believe, you don't receive. It's a capitalist, consumerist holiday, and it's time for a Santa-sized stimulus. Get your free market merch at the AP for Liberty shop today and stuff your socialist sisters' stockings full of capitalist cheer. Ho, 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 ho! Well, my next guest writes at the New York Post that the mainstream media lied to me about conservatives. He says that there was a time when I perceived the world of politics through a deceptive lens that our mainstream media optimist provided me. He used to be a Democrat. Now he's a very popular conservative online. His name is Adam Coleman. He's the founder of Wrong Speak Publications. He's an author and a speaker, and he joins us right now. Good morning, Adam. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We're glad to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I guess tell us a little bit about your journey. You started out as a Democrat, but you say that you didn't really have any conservative friends. So maybe you should just start there.
Yeah, I think it mostly has to do with location. You know, I primarily lived in northern to central New Jersey, generally rather blue, generally liberal, not super liberal, but generally liberal. And as far as like discussing politics, I know it's more normal to discuss politics these days openly. But even personally, when I would discuss politics with people, everybody was a Democrat. So my view of what it meant to be a conservative or Republican basically came from media filtering. It didn't come from a one-on-one interaction. I probably knew, if I really think about it, maybe 2 Republicans that I had some sort of interaction with throughout my adult life. Before I started actually seeking out conversations with conservatives, being around conservatives, and like I said in the article, actually going to a conservative conference just to hear what they had to say. And my viewpoint is that I am socially conservative these days. And it seems like it's a conservative viewpoint when you say, hey, I just don't want my kids sexualized, and I don't think we should mutilate children. Which is a shame. I thought that was something that we all used to agree on. But yeah, I guess if that's one of those standards, then I'm a social conservative today. Politically, I'm an independent, and I just voted for Republican for the first time in my life on Sunday.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Adam Coleman. He's an author and a writer. His new piece in the New York Post talks about how he transitioned from a Democrat to a conservative. And his latest Substack article talks about how he voted Republican for the first time in his life. So do you want to summarize that for us, why you decided to vote Republican, Adam?
I touched on it with a couple things. The sexualization of children, exposing them to sexual content in schools, and how when parents started speaking up about it, the media started slandering them as being white supremacists and bigots. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter that it's LGBT or not. You're discussing sexuality. You're having very explicit content, so much so that when parents would read stuff that in these books at the school board, they would cut them off for being explicit. And I'm watching this and I'm like, why are the Democrats making this a divisive issue? And it's because the Democrats have become socially progressive. Politically, they teeter back and forth with, making it sound like they're catering to progressives, but they really aren't. They're establishment. Their establishment types, but socially, they want to sound progressive. And so they will do everything possible to signal that this is fine, it's acceptance, yes. And I said the other day, when Joe Biden sat down and said, basically advocated for the mutilation of children on television in his own words, I said, oh, that's the death knell right there. Like that's it. That's it for the Democrats. Like that is not a popular position whatsoever. And they've gone so far left that I can't support it. I've actually just stopped supporting them a while ago. But this is the first opportunity. I just decided to actually go to the polls and vote Republican, because they're the only ones that have the most common sense. Like, hey, the very basic thing that we used to not even dispute, we didn't even talk about it because it's so basic. You don't sexualize children and you don't advocate to mutilate them. They've gone so far to the left that the Republicans seem like the most reasonable choice. And I can't, like, what else am I supposed to do?
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Adam Coleman. He's an author and a writer. He's talking about what it was like to come into contact with conservatives for the first time in his life and why he voted Republican for the first time in his life. If you have a question, you can send us in a text at 573-319-1586. Now, Adam, this is this might be a little bit of a difficult question here, but I mean, to my knowledge and understanding, the African American community is, largely socially conservative because the African American community is largely Christian. So was it the issue of the mutilation of children that really took it too far? Because there are plenty of African Americans who are happily Democrat. They go to church on Sunday, but they're not going to vote Democrat this fall because they don't believe that the Republican Party has their best interests at heart. They might not feel as comfortable about the sexualization of children, but it's not going to be the kind of thing that's going to have them make such a radical transition in their voting patterns. Is what you're doing here, voting Republican, would you say that you're an anomaly, or would you say that more people, in the Black community are starting to see these and make these kinds of changes?
Unfortunately, I still think I'm an anomaly, but I think there are more anomalies that are out there. I think there are more people like myself, I talk to them all the time, who are waking up and saying, whether it's the sexualization of children or other things, they're saying something's not right here. And, the Republican Party, at the very least, is not doing those things. And in some cases, doing things to prevent it from happening, which is why I support Ron DeSantis, because he's the only one, I don't want to say only one, but he's the biggest when it comes to actually attacking, people like to say the culture war stuff, but it actually means something to some of these people. To some of these parents, yes, having this content in schools, you know what? We should have some sort of board. We should have some sort of limitation when it comes to it, because we wouldn't say Playboy should be in schools. Why? Because we know it's explicit content. So that means that we're not banning that book just to ban books. We're banning that book because we want to prevent children from being stuff that's inappropriate. And I think that more Black Americans are seeing this, but unfortunately, the largest hurdle that Republicans will ever have is the narrative that all Republicans and conservatives are racist.
This is a good conversation that we're having with Adam Coleman. One of our listeners texted in and asked a question for you, Adam. They said, ask him what it means to be a conservative to him. Pro-life, limited government, support the Second Amendment, rugged individualism, conserve what we have. How would you define a conservative, Adam?
Well, actually, very close to what this person said. Even when I was a Democrat, I was a moderate. I had no problem with people owning guns. I didn't personally own a gun, but I didn't have a problem with people owning guns. And I think that the old position of being a moderate Democrat and moderate Republican were very close to each other. Like, you kind of understood some of the positions, and maybe not everything. The only thing that I have wholly changed was I was pro-choice, and I'm wholly pro-life, and that's probably like the strongest position change that I've made within the past number of years, for a multitude of reasons. So that's why a lot of the things I write about, family, fatherhood, children, because I understand how important it is for our society. And then when I see one political party like Stacey Abrams, who I think has become the anti-NATO candidate, who is talking about abortion in the same way about leasing a vehicle, about the economics of abortion. Something about that is extremely dehumanizing. And I don't know why anybody would support something like that. And that is how far left and how far crazy, where a mainstream politician, or she's not in office, but a mainstream candidate, let's just say, is advocating for the stuff that we would have thought was insane 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, Adam, we're speaking to Adam Coleman if you're just tuning into the morning show here. One of our listeners texted in, they were talking about this conversation we've been having this morning about the Atlantic author who called for a general pandemic amnesty for things that were said and done during the pandemic. I know that yesterday you tweeted something about that one, but you were generally, righteously indignant at the concept, the idea that we might offer some kind of an amnesty to the left for all of the ills that they committed during the pandemic. And I've been sort of playing devil's advocate a little bit on this morning. And, one of our listeners texted in and said, if you don't allow people to apologize when they are wrong, then they have no incentive to admit when they are wrong. And we'll just get more of the doubling down that so many of them did throughout the pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the problem. They're not apologizing. What that article is basically saying is saying, let bygones be bygones and move on. Right. And that's not an apology. And you don't just get amnesty just because you think you should get amnesty. And that's my problem with it. I am a Christian. I understand people want second chances. But from the media, the same media that said, I want grandma to die, the same media that said I'm a conspiracy theorist, the same media that did everything possible to slander me, the same media that advocated for the government to do something about misinformation so we couldn't question anything, the same left-wing government that went to OSHA and tried to enforce a needle into my arm or else I get constant testing. These are the same people who are now saying, oh, hey, listen, we got caught up. hey, forgive us. Like they just had a drunk night the night before and they just lost their mind a little bit. Hey, let's just move on. That's not where we're at, because I'll tell you this, I lost someone close to me because they got the booster. And then 2 weeks later, they're fighting a blood clot near their heart and they died. They forced my wife to get a jab or else she loses her job in New York City. This is personal to me. And for someone to say, oh, well, just let it go, let's forget. I remember the same people who used to use, I know someone who died from COVID as a legitimization for everything that happened. But we're not allowed to say, I know someone who died from the vaccine as a legitimization to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't push this on everybody. So yeah, I have as you can hear in my voice, I have a big problem with the idea of just complete amnesty.
Well, I certainly think that a lot of my listeners and viewers would agree with you, Adam. Is there anything else that you think my listeners should know before I let you go? Anything that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, definitely check out my Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. Also check out Wrongspeak Substack, wrongspeak.substack.com. We're doing everything possible to push narratives that are counter narrative and just advocate for freedom of speech for people to express themselves. So we take submissions for Wrongspeak, so definitely check us out. And generally speaking, I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to be in London. Actually, I'm leaving tonight to be on trigonometry and to do some press out there. I'll be at America Fest this December at a table, so stop by. So yeah, I'm just trying to be everywhere.
It sounds great. And it looks like from the feedback that I'm getting from the audience over in the comments that they really loved the interview. They said, Adam is very good. Great interview. Bring him back. Adam Coleman, thank you very much for your time today. We're delighted to have you on the program.
Thank you. Anytime.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Didi's website, and I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy Bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake. Yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes. You like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchy Bullshit. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bullshit blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Any real world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Well, Canada, it's got free health care. Everybody tells us here in the United States, if you're on the left side of the spectrum, that it's a great place to live. You don't have to worry about paying your medical bills. Something happens to you, you can go to the doctor and it's all free. Sounds like paradise, like the United States, but better. Well, my next guest who's joining me right now has a bone to pick with the head of her government, Justin Trudeau. The extension of end-of-life care means, well, you can end your life. That will be extended. The MAID, Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying program, will begin allowing citizens to be considered eligible for state-sanctioned euthanasia. Joining me now is political commentator and someone who lived in Canada for a time, but is American, Marie Oakes. Good morning, Marie. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Hi, Austin. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so obviously, this is the kind of thing that people who are, of our ideological ilk, people who believe in life, liberty, and property, are, I think, outraged by, and justifiably so, Marie. What's your response to the government of Canada doing something like this?
Well, with this program, it is the definition of a slippery slope. When this program first came into being, it was super hard to be eligible for. It was, for the terminally ill, people who were about to die. And they've ever since introducing this law, they had to even change the Constitution in order for this to be implemented into law, because there are some things about healthcare within the Constitution. This has just kept and kept and kept growing in eligibility. I even had, a distant relative who recently used this program, a pretty standard old lady. She had a fall one day. She was in the hospital. They found something wrong with her heart. The doctor offered her, this program. Within 2 days, she was dead. Her family begged her, please don't do it. Please don't do it. She had a good life. She was, in her early 80s. She was still autonomous. She was living in her own apartment. Accident happened. Boom, they find another problem. They don't want to deal with the problem. They basically tell you, hey, your outlook, to see a specialist X amount of months, maybe years, depends on your situation, depends on the specialist you needed to see. For so many Canadians, they know the reality of what this healthcare system is, the wait times that have become, 15 years ago, it wasn't the problems they're facing today. But a lot of Canadians are now choosing to basically have the government kill themselves for themselves instead of, honestly, I understand waiting these wait times and just suffering while you just wait and question, am I going to die anyway?
Pretty terrible stuff. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm speaking to Marie Oakes. She's a political commentator. We're talking about Canada extending their end-of-life assistance, aka euthanasia, to people who are mentally unwell. Now, to my understanding, if you're mentally unwell, I mean, that's the definition of, needing protection, needing care, right? So if you're not able to make decisions for yourself, you're in mental illness. In a sense, you're losing your autonomy. So I mean, in theory, how could you even make a decision like that?
Well, they try to say there's like these safeguards up. Oh, you have to go through a physician, you have to voluntarily ask for it. But in reality, we're seeing reports after reports where it's not even the patient themselves is asking for it. It's actually being presented to them as an option by the doctors. And, you can see me here now. I am currently, even though the whole being like depressed and all this stuff, mental illness is not part of it. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I am currently eligible for this system if I so choose to be eligible for this policy, because I'm a type 1 diabetic. My illness is irreversible. That is currently the eligibility. You don't have to have a fatal illness anymore. Well, my illness is considered fatal. So me right now, I look fine. I could ask the state to kill me in 2 days' time, 4 days' time. It's the only service in Canada that you can get in that quickly of time, which is shocking. It's the only thing you can get in a timely manner is to ask to kill yourself, because the thing that's different about
hurry
the
up,
US,
get your butt back to America.
She is. She's back.
I'm in America.
She's here. She's here.
But when I moved to Canada, because I am a type 1 diabetic, I take my health seriously. I had to look into, how do I get an endocrinologist? How do I get a doctor? I was there for 6 years. I still never got a primary care doctor. After 3 years, I was able to get an endocrinologist, thankfully. But when I was there, I was doing research. The way in which this government sees its citizens is burdens. The word on the Health Canada website is, if you're a type 1 diabetic or you're someone with like a chronic illness, they label you a burden on the healthcare system. Maybe for other people, that's like shocking to use such negative language as to like someone who actually needs healthcare versus like people who don't really use the healthcare system. They're not considered burdens, but they're the ones filling up the emergency rooms because they're coughing. So, but the people who need it were burdens. And that is how they view this sick in Canada, is you are a burden on our healthcare system because you need to use it X amount of times. And we have only X amount of resources, and that is dwindling. And there's cases in BC with cancer treatments where they have I think it's 16 oncologists. So many are leaving the field because it's burnout. It's so horrible. I feel for these doctors. I also kind of don't like that they would leave a situation they know is so awful for the patients. But you're seeing perfectly fine people who are getting, cancer, not being able to get treatment for like 8 months at a time, where it's like this is considered like medically dangerous periods of time. And they're still not able to be seen even for first consultation by an oncologist. So they end up suffering. So they have to decide, is it worth the chance of suffering, or should I just, medically suicide myself with the government's okay on this? And this is changing the Overton window, in my opinion, of what is acceptable treatment for people, because now we're in this situation. Even after COVID, I've noticed that doctors, people in the medical offices, they kind of just want to not deal with you. If you ever call a doctor's office, it's almost impossible to get an appointment because no one answers the phone, or they make all these hurdles to do it. Even in the US, where the same thing is happening everywhere else, where they're trying to figure out ways to deal with you less and less and less. And I wouldn't be surprised that this could even come to the US at some point, if it's not already here. Maybe in some states it is.
Deeply troubling. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking to Marie Oakes. She is a political commentator talking to us about Canada's assisted suicide program. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. You know what I'm deeply concerned about? And I certainly hope this isn't already the case, Marie, but from some of these programs in Europe that exist about minors, people who are under the age of 18, being granted access to these programs. That's not currently the case in Canada yet, is it?
No, it's not. But I even will venture to say, I'm not that old. I'm 25. I remember what it was like to be 18, especially having a chronic illness. That was a time when my illness wasn't doing well. I was young. I wasn't managing my diabetes like I should have. And there were times I was like, I can't live like this. There's no way I could live like this. But at the time, that was not an option. It was a new rollout when I was in Canada. It was like, but I did have thoughts of, I don't want to live the rest of my life like that. So when you're 18, even for these 18-year-olds, like, especially if you have a mental health problem, I can't imagine this is like acceptable even over the age of 18. People say you're an adult. I'm sorry, your mind is, you're still not there. It takes till you're like 23, 24 to really kind of have a grasp of who you are. Some people will be different. I know there's outliers, but generally speaking, I think 18 is like very crazy to be making these sort of decisions of literally not living anymore. I think with suicide, you should make it as hard as possible. Someone has, like, you can't ask the government to do it for you. It makes it way too easy. If you really don't want to live, I've had friends who have committed suicide. It's not pretty. It's not easy. It's hard. And I think that's kind of the way we should go about this, because we don't want people just offing themselves because maybe they're not in the right mental health space for a few years. I'm sorry, when you're 18, you're kind of still, when you're young, you just don't really understand who you are. In general, you are more susceptible of not seeing why life is valuable.
This is really good stuff. We're speaking to Marie Oakes about Canada's euthanasia program. I wanted to switch just a little bit to a related topic. You sent me a thread this morning from an Andrea Wu, who was telling a story about an otherwise healthy man in his early 40s who was diagnosed with metastatic pancreatic cancer, waited 8 weeks for a first consult, and died 3 days later. So, well, I mean, if he had gotten in, at least it would have been free, Marie. But this is kind of an example of what we're talking about here, about how the healthcare system, it might be free, but if you can't see a doctor, it doesn't matter, does it?
No, it absolutely does not. Like, personally, I'm still on a wait list, even though I'm not in Canada, because once you're on a wait list, you can't even take yourself off to like make room for someone else technically. So that's just how it is once you're on a wait list, you don't know how long you're going to be on it. It's not digitized. You don't know what space you're in. You don't even know if your referral has been lost. So you're just like in a waiting game, hoping that you'll receive a letter in the mail that says, your doctor is this, your appointment date is this. You barely even have like decision over your appointment date, because you will just take whatever you can get. And I'm coming from Quebec. That's where I was living. So it's a much different situation. Every province is a bit different. Quebec's kind of one of the worst. So I was in the worst of the worst. I saw the worst of the worst this system can produce. Once I went to the emergency room, I was there for 26 hours. And then I had to come back again because they were like, you're not going to be seen. Like, come back tomorrow. You're still in line. And that was like a big wake up call for me when I would talk to people about this. They would tell me I'm lying. And I would tell like my friends in America and they'd be like, oh, I have a family member in Ontario, or oh, I have a family member in Alberta. It's not the same situation there. It's like, yes, the healthcare system's different everywhere you go, every hospital. So depending where you work, but right now, overall situation in Canada, every politician in Canada is finally talking about it, but like it's your guys' fault because you guys run it. They're all saying the healthcare system's falling. It's falling. COVID like really destroyed people's confidence in the Canadian healthcare system because the veil was lifted.
Marie Oakes, you can follow her online. Marie, where can people follow you online to learn more about your work as a political commentator?
You can find me basically everywhere at The Marie Oakes at, basically Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm everywhere right now. I even have a Telegram. That's a really good place as well. So just like look me up.
And you can see how her name is spelled right underneath her lovely picture there on the live stream this morning. Marie, thank you very much for your time today. We're very grateful for you. That was a great report.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate.
Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, it's 7:34. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Well, Liberty Laura isn't going to be able to make it today. She was up all night with her kids who were sick. She said she wanted to give them codeine, but she can't. Back in the old days, I guess they just give them a little drop of whiskey, right? Shame, know your name. Well, one mom who we're very grateful for today is joining us now. Happy Thanksgiving to Camellia Petersen. She's a great mom. How you doing, CJ?
Good. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. What is the? So let's just come start out with it. Is there anything that you think you should be ashamed of, Camellia?
Oh gosh, I was thinking about this. There's probably all kinds of things people, I mean, I don't know. I used to let my girls go out and play in the rain and the mud puddles. I don't know. Somebody probably would shame me for that at some point.
Well, have you ever had like a mom shaming moment online where somebody was like nitpicking your mothering for whatever reason and doing so like publicly?
Well, no, and I think there's probably a pretty good reason for that. It's because I don't put everything online.
Oh, she's a perfect mother. That's what it is. Is that
you know it?
Yeah. Well, the reason why I thought this was a good topic is I saw this woman, Coco Austin. She's wife of the rapper Ice Cube, was crying. She's broke down in tears when she was talking about the online parenting police. She says, "You don't hear the goodness, you just hear a lot of bad." And she says, "And I know I'm a good mother." She's kind of like famous for like crouching down and showing her butt on the camera while she's in heels and stuff. So I mean, so
I can see why. Yes.
Yes. So people are shaming her online. And you see this phenomenon. Camellia, just talk about it too for just a moment, because I'm sure you've seen people go after moms online that they disagree with. Maybe you've done it. Maybe you've been a mom shamer.
Well, I haven't, although I will say, there's so much information out there anymore as far as, what not to do, what to do with your kids. Although I'll tell you, probably the circles where I've seen it most are in the crunchy circles. So, I think there's probably a fair amount of mom shaming that goes on.
Yeah, how dare you give your child the V word? The
measles. Oh, I know, right?
Oh, dude, yes. That is the biggest mom shaming group right there in the world. How dare you give your child the poison in their veins?
Right. And like all kinds of things like medications, related to that. I mean, it's, you should be using essential oils and, grass-fed beef and everything else that's all natural. And that's probably where I've seen most of it. But, with Coco and this whole thing with her daughter, I mean, a little bit comes with the territory, and that, she's putting not only herself out there, but also her daughter out there, kind of maintaining this celebrity status. And, when I looked at some of the pictures, it reminds me of some of the beauty pageant pictures that people put their little girls in, which is, but the whole thing, like a couple of the things where the girl is 6 and she bathed her in a sink, which, okay, that's a little weird. I looked at the sink. It's a big sink. She fit. I don't
Why is
really
that weird?
I don't know. Well, to me, I'm just looking at it in a very practical point of view and thinking, You have to pick her up and get her all the way up there for starters, and that just seems impractical.
This is some mom shaming going on right now. You are mom shaming. I think I was bathed in a sink when I was a little kid. What's wrong with bathing in the sink? That's the weirdest thing
Nothing
ever.
like when you're 2, but I mean, it's just logistically easier than when you're 6. It's maybe not as easy, but I don't care if somebody bathes their kid in the sink. Like, who cares? It's a little weird, but people do weird stuff all the time. Now, if we're going to talk about breastfeeding,
See,
breastfeeding
that's where I was
6-year-olds.
going to be. Yeah, but here's the thing. I have seen moms who breastfeed their kids like in like the weird stuff where it's like they're like 9, 10, 12 and stuff like that. I've seen some weird stuff around that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Mom shame.
I mean, 3 years old is okay. I've seen that, and that's not quite as abnormal. Like 6 years old, 9 years old.
It's a little odd. It's a little odd. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm speaking to Camelia Petersen. We're talking about the trends of mom shaming online. I sent you another article from the New York Times. I know you only had time to skim it because it was a little bit of a last minute thing, but it's about mompreneurs and kind of like the rise of this industry online and the allure of mompreneurs, where you have like these moms that are out there, and they tend to be like the crunchy granola types, and some of them making millions of dollars online. And it's kind of like with other social media, when you look at Instagram, when you see these girls with these airbrush photos and these perfect butts and all this stuff, it puts the pressure on young girls. But now there's a lot of pressure on like older women who are moms to kind of conform to those standards, right? I think there was this woman who her name was Maria Kang a few years ago, and she like put out this photo of her with her tight, perfect body and her 3 little kids, and she's like, "What's your excuse?" Right? And it caused a huge backlash online. But I mean, that you ladies are very competitive when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I can imagine that there is a lot of a lot of pressure to be the perfect mom now, even more than there was in the past.
Sure. Well, and I think it's because, everything's so much more visible in a lot of ways. And I think, there's competitiveness, yes, maybe to a certain extent, but we also, moms, at least a lot of moms, tend to be pretty self-critical and probably hold ourselves to higher standards than everybody else does, truth be told. But yeah, so I mean, now kind of in the age of Instagram and TikTok, there is, like everything else, you see the good side of everything. And so you want to be doing all of the right things with your kids, and they're neatly dressed and everybody's matching and your house looks spotless.
Yes. Like like a certain person that we know in Southwest Missouri who no one could ever live up to, who's our friend Kathy Jo.
Oh, yeah.
There's just
One
no
day
way.
One day I'm going to grow up and be like Kathy Jo. And you know what? Kathy Jo would be the first to tell you that there's no perfection. She's had her moments too, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, if you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen, I'm speaking to Camelia Petersen. We are not related, and we're talking about mom shaming online and momfluencers and why they're so good at worming their way into their home. But momfluencers, they write at the New York Times, the purveyors of these pernicious expectations are part of a multi-billion-dollar industry selling products to a market of millennial moms with an estimated $2 trillion to spend. Many are just trying to make money working flexible hours while spending time with their young children in a country without paid parental leave or affordable childcare. Very true, but I mean, I can imagine that if your children were a lot younger, Camelia, it would be a lot harder, especially, being a single mom, trying to raise your kids without the kind of childcare options that you might have had otherwise, just because most companies don't offer those kinds of benefits, right? But there's a lot of pressure on moms to try and, to do everything. It's kind of like this conversation that we've always had where it's kind of like there's trade-offs in life and you're just not going to be able to do everything, but there's a lot of pressure to do everything,
For sure. And I think, when we've talked before about women, like doing it all now and having it all. So that's what has been becoming the norm, the norm expectation in our society. The stay-at-home moms are the anomaly now more than anything. And we've talked before about influencers and young people aspiring to be influencers, and basically that this is the new advertising. And it's the same for momfluencers. This is the new advertising. advertising for all of the toys and the family products and things like this. And so you look at those things and you're like, oh, that is so nice. I would really like my home to be like that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I watch some, of course, I don't really watch the momfluencers. I watch some other Instagram stuff, but organizational stuff. But I look at that and I'm like, oh, I really like that look. That looks so clean and peaceful and organized. And like, I want that too. And, I get good ideas from there. But the difference is like, it's super important to remember that, like you said, these are people who have spent a ton of hours in the background creating this advertisement for you because they are making money off of it. They are getting paid sponsorships out of this a lot of times too. And so there is a ton of work that goes into producing something like that. It's a little bit like producing a radio show in some ways. You don't see all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes.
I know you think that you're just talking into the microphone, or that the Wake Up America show's beautiful Thanksgiving decorations that you're seeing in the background right now just came out of nowhere, and I wasn't slaving away at 5 a.m. this morning. Camelia, maybe I'd be a great mom. Camelia, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your 2 daughters. We're always grateful. Thanks for saving my ass today. Appreciate you.
No worries. And you know what? I totally feel for Laura, and I'm so happy to be one mom filling in for another mom, because it's so hard when your kids are sick, and I totally get that. So I hope her family feels better.
Shame. No, we'll
no.
Give her a break. No. Thanks, Camelia. Have a good one.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. All right. What do we got coming up next?
Were you exposed to hazardous materials while serving in the military and have an illness or condition as a result?
If so, you may be eligible for VA benefits and services.
Whether you need health care or want to file a disability compensation claim related to military exposures, VA is here to help.
Visit va.gov/military-exposures to learn more and apply today.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
Thank you, guys.
Enough yet? Do facts no longer matter? Are lies to be encouraged instead of punished? This is not our inheritance. If truth no longer matters, we will not remain free for long. This is our generation's challenge, to defend our founders' hope that we the people could self-govern if we defend our right to get the facts. And right now, we're building the only defense of free people have. The facts on every politician, every position they held, every statement they've made, every vote they've made, and any cash they've taken. It's the real history on those now pandering for your vote. There are hundreds of young people building our defense right now, and they need your help. We all have our passions, but as our ancestors knew, when events become so foul they threaten us all, we must stand and defend each other. Please, have our backs. Join us at votesmart.org.
happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas and a liberty New Year. Socialists and commies may try to convince you that the holiday's all about free stuff. But let's be honest, we all know whose wallet Santa's gifts are coming out of. There ain't no such thing as a free stocking. Santa is the only guy with a big white beard promising free stuff that we want anything to do with this holiday. And if you don't believe, you don't receive. It's a capitalist, consumerist holiday, and it's time for a Santa-sized stimulus. Get your free market merch at the AP for Liberty shop today and stuff your socialist sisters' stockings full of capitalist cheer. Ho, 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 ho!
Well, you've all been enjoying the Trump remix back on Twitter this morning. Well, we'll do the little Trump dance a little bit later. First, we got to speak to my good buddy, John Miltimore. He's the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. He's joining us on the program right now. Wow. Nice new camera set up there, John. Looking handsome. Thanks for joining us today.
I don't know about the handsome part, but I'm working on the setup. Yeah, I got a new camera, got a new mic I'll be installing. So hopefully it's an improvement.
Yeah, for sure it is. John, thanks so much for joining us today. I guess, can I get your reaction? What do you think about Donald Trump having his Twitter account restored by Elon Musk?
Well, I'm happy it was restored. I always found it really frightening. It was, terminated or suspended or whatever you want to call it anyway. I think, you don't have to be a Trump fan to look at that and see that, the danger there. It has been a weird week though. Like you're watching the reaction to it, and it's really surreal. I remember, growing up was like one of these issues. No, everybody on free speech, everybody agreed. It didn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. In America, pretty much everyone agreed that free speech was a good thing. That's not the case anymore. And why, is a big question we can look at. But yeah, clearly progressives are not in the same camp as far as free speech goes. And why I have some theories on that, and it's a big topic, something I'll probably write on down the road. But I find it alarming that there's this much discord over people just speaking on a platform.
The thing that really, that bothers me the most, right? That people don't believe in free speech, because we weren't in a position to even have it challenged or questioned in such a way. I mean, when we were kids, John, we were in a situation where if you had to worry about the loss of free speech, it was things like, you'd point to Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers, right? You'd look at stories about, people being clamped down on whistleblowers, and, people who had their free speech clamped down on were people who were, professionals in positions of power doing reporting and journalism. Now we're in a situation where free speech is being lost by, just average citizens, average Joes. I mean, Donald Trump is one thing, and he's I think, an avatar for it to an extent. But in many ways, I think free speech is being clamped down on by, it's happening to regular people. And I'll tell you one thing, John, and I know that, libertarians would quibble with me on this. For a long time, I bought into the whole argument of, it's a private platform. It's not your free speech. It's only when the government does it. But I think that there is such a thing as a chilling effect that happens in these platforms. And I do think that speech on Twitter is a part of free speech. And while, I don't want the government influencing these platforms and telling them what to do, and I think that is obviously unconstitutional, I do think that it is a free speech issue when these platforms crack down on just regular Joes like you and I. Would you agree or disagree?
No, I do agree. And I think a lot of people, it's kind of silly. They think, did free speech suddenly invent in 1787? Is that when free speech started? No, like the founders looked, free speech was being debated for a century or more before this in earnest. And people understood, you can go back to John Milton writing about it, why discussing ideas was so important. And you could see why. In these monarchies, kings, if you said stuff that they didn't like, they took really draconian, action. But Twitter is like, this matters. Is there a difference between the government doing it and some censorship? Sure, absolutely. I think we should recognize that, but that doesn't mean speech, suppressing speech is good because of that. And I wasn't on board with some of the Republicans that were saying, well, free speech is so important, we need the government to enforce it on Twitter, which I always looked at that as a bigger threat than a solution. But we should look at the value of speech and say, look, we need to be discussing ideas. To me, if you're trying to suppress your political opponents, it stems a lot from arrogance. It means that we have the answers, we have the truth. You don't even deserve to be debating it here with us. And that to me is truly dangerous. But and there was things about Twitter at first when I remember when I got on Twitter and like it allowed everything, right? I'm like, there's porn on Twitter, like it's like live streaming stuff, like this is crazy. But that was at the time, Twitter kind of said, look, like this is speech like everything else. I bought that, I'm like, I'm not gonna go censor Twitter or boycott Twitter because they have things on there I don't approve of. But that kind of is a place now. And even to come back to Trump, you saw people like George Conway saying, I'm done, I'm leaving because Elon reinstated Trump. And to me, it's just crazy. Like they think they have the moral high ground because they believe in censoring hate speech.
That's so strange. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen, you can send us a text at 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Looks like we've got a bunch of new people on the show today. Glad to have you here. Buddy Mansur joining us over there this morning. Again, if you want to send us a text, you can. 573-319-1586. We're joined on the show right now by John Miltimore. He's the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. Good morning, Al Johnson. John, question for you here. This isn't necessarily related to Trump on Twitter, but more about what Trump brings out in people. I mean, I think that there's a lot of blatant authoritarianism that you see that comes out on the left. But I mean, I think a little bit less critically analyzed to a certain extent is Trump's impact on people on the right and how he brings out authoritarianism in right-wingers. Now, whether or not you think, Trump himself is an authoritarian, I think there is a case to be made in many ways. When he says things like, that we need to execute drug dealers, right? He's not talking about the CEO of Pfizer, that's for sure. This Trump derangement syndrome that's brought out in conservatives. I mean, he has people who are self-proclaimed conservatives voting Democrat, and a lot of people who are self-proclaimed libertarians, out there, leaving the liberty movement because they're so triggered by him. I mean, what is it that he brings out in these people that has turned the right against itself, would you say?
We have to look back at Trump and see, like, he's been an entertainer for a long time. He knows how to perform. I think a lot of that's what he does. He is, I think, to his core, a narcissist. But I think you're absolutely right. He does bring out the worst authoritarian streaks in people. I still get, and I'm going to make a disclosure. I voted for Trump twice, and I said I won't do it again. And I kind of was like everyone. I'm like, like you can kind of vote libertarian, which I think there's nothing wrong with that. I said, or you can vote for the guy that you think has a chance at winning. So I voted for him. Never really, liked the man, but I didn't look at him as dangerous until after November 2020. And I realized, like, even after everything went down, like, his defenders still, they really lionize him. And I don't think they realize the damage he's done to the presidency, to the country. I think he does bring out some of the worst in people. I think people like that because they want to go at it with progressives who they see having some of these same authoritarian tendencies. I think we got to go back and look at good principles. I think Trump gets some principles on policy right. I think too much, like even with little things like violence, like it always bothered me. Trump could never quite come out and condemn violence. Even at his own campaigns, he's talking about paying the legal bills if somebody, or maybe his lawyer bills if somebody, hits one of the guys, like things like this. Like political violence isn't something you joke about. Like it's something, that needs to be taken seriously. And what his end game was on January 6th, I don't know. Like I've gotten arguments with families. They're like, well, he didn't do anything wrong. I go, well, what was he trying to do there? Like he's got a massive riot in the Capitol. Like that to me does look authoritarian. He's trying to use like his mass appeal to intimidate, the swamp, if you want to, and I really think that's why they're terrified of Trump, because he has the ability to do that.
In his defense, though, and I'm pulling up his tweets now. My buddy Mike Apelka sent me this morning on January the 6th at 2:38 p.m. He said, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." And then he also tweeted at 3:13 p.m., "I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you." Now, John, not to again make light of political violence here or anything, but I mean, I did make a joke on January 6th that got me in a lot of trouble when I said we should have stormed the Capitol back when they passed the New Deal. I mean, how can we as libertarians embrace the philosophy of the American Revolution and then turn around and condemn political violence?
It's a good question. I remember a professor of mine having a discussion with us way back. I think I was a freshman in college, and he was calling the American founders, the colonials that were rebelling, terrorists. And I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? But if you look at some of their tactics, like his point was they did use violence at times. So I get where you're coming from. As far as those particular tweets, people like to send me those. There's those need to be put in context too. That happened after people were screaming at him all morning to do something, and he didn't want to. And finally, he's like, "Well, we got to be peaceful." And he's always been very good at talking out of both sides of his mouth. Right. And there was a reason he had everyone there and everyone fired up. And here's the thing: I don't blame it all on Trump either. I still have a ton of questions about how the Capitol riot started. I think we had a lot of people in the federal government that we know for a fact that had infiltrated these groups and were there. I think they were there fomenting. I hope House Republicans have the courage to ask some of these important questions, because if the federal government has any fingerprints on that the full story needs to come out. But so I won't blame Trump for all the violence. Like the word insurrection, I think again, I don't know his end game. Like, was he just a demonstration of power? Like I think Mike Pence did the same thing and said, no, I'm not going to discard a whole election here and kick it over to, like, it was a very dangerous road they were going down. I know there was allegations of fraud and all that. I say, prove the fraud, that's what you have to do. If you really think this is here, you have the Department of Justice at your disposal, go show that he chose a different route. And I think it was dangerous. And, clearly that's why you had people that think Trump's too dangerous for Twitter.
John Miltimore, is there anything else that you think that people should know before I let you go?
Not really. I did. I started a Substack. I don't know if you saw that, Austin. It's one of those things. I should have started it 2-3 years ago, but you do enough writing on other platforms. You're like, I don't need a Substack. But it's something. It's at like jjmilt@gmail is my Substack, and I'll be writing there pretty much every day. It's some of the pieces will be shorter. But I'm trying to grow it. So if people want to go check it out, it's called I think it's called The Take by John Miltimore or something.
The Take by John Miltimore.
I branded it in all of 15 seconds. So.
All righty, good to know. John Miltimore, managing editor from the Foundation for Economic Education. Thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you very much.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on, Austin. You have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you, John. We appreciate you. All right, let's go back.
like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.